the village that sacrificed a child every winter until one spoke from a fire. In the frozen, mist-covered valley of an unnamed region, there was once a remote mountain village completely isolated from the outside world. Surrounded by dark pine forests and blanketed by snow 8 months of the year, this village lived under a brutal truth. Every winter, a child had to be sacrificed to keep the cold away. No one remembered exactly when it started. Generations grew up simply knowing and accepting that the mountain demanded a child every winter solstice. If it wasn't given, the snow would not stop, the cattle would freeze standing, and the villagers would begin to vanish one by one. Their bodies would be found months later, faces frozen in screams, their eyes wide open, rimmed in frost, looking toward the same mountain peak. It was always a silent child, orphaned, sickly, or otherwise forgotten, wrapped in red cloth and left in a wicker basket at the center of a large pyre built at the village edge. At sundown it would be lit, the flames would rise, the screams would be short-lived, and the wind would die down immediately after. Every time, like the fire had fed the very bones of the mountain, the elders never explained why it worked, only that it must be done, and the village obeyed. Until one year, when the snow came earlier than expected and the cold was unlike anything they had known. The air didn't feel like wind anymore. It felt like something crawling over their skin. That year, the chosen child was a mute boy of 7. They called him Tomas. He had never spoken a word since birth. He had no parents, only a blind grandmother who, it was whispered, used to be one of the winter priestesses long ago. She screamed and spat at the villagers as they took him, calling them children of cowards, but no one listened. On the night of the sacrifice, as the fire consumed the wood, something changed. He screamed, but not in pain. He spoke, and the voice that came from his mouth was not a child's. It was deep, layered, as if many voices were speaking at once. And what it said froze the entire village where they stood. You have burned my skin for 100 winters. Now I shall burn yours for 100 more. The fire didn't die out. It grew. It leapt unnaturally high, turned blue then black, and sucked inward instead of flaring outward. A swirling column of flame rose into the sky, and then collapsed on itself like a sinkhole of smoke and screams. Where Tomas once lay, there was now only charred, shifting ash, and from it, something began to crawl out. Something small and still smoldering, that had Tomas's face, but eyes too old to belong to any child. That night, the snow didn't stop. The storm buried the village for days, then weeks. One by one, the homes were swallowed by frost. And when spring finally came, no one emerged. Hikers who found the ruins decades later reported strange signs. Every fireplace in homes was filled with such shaped like open mouths, and the trees around the village had grown in twisted spirals, their trunks burned as if struck by lightning from within. But most terrifying of all, they found a diary in what remained of the Elder Hall. The last entry read, "He spoke. The mountain has spoken back. We should never have taught the silence how to scream." Themes and interpretation. This horror story blends folklore and psychological terror. It explores collective guilt. A whole village normalizes ritual child sacrifice for survival. Silence and complicity. The mute child represents the voiceless victims, and his voice becomes the weapon of justice. Reversal of power. The sacrifice, once voiceless, becomes the avenger, speaking with the voice of the mountain itself. Nature as vengeance. The mountain isn't just a setting, it's a living entity, one that kept quiet until now. The winter that didn't end. When the spring thaw failed to come, the world took notice. Planes that once flew over mountains reported an unnatural fog where the village had been like an ever-churning cloud of ash. Satellite images showed nothing but white, a swirling vortex that blocked out every signal. Some thought it was a dormant volcano awakening. Others called it a freak weather phenomenon. But those who lived near the border of the woods whispered differently. They said the wind had begun to carry voices, and that sometimes, just sometimes, you could hear a child's cry buried in the howling. A government expedition was finally authorized. They never returned. The only clue left behind was an emergency radio transmission intercepted by nearby military stations. The message was scrambled, broken, but 3 words came through clearly, repeated over and over again in a female voice, sobbing. "He's still burning." What the grandmother knew, before the snow fully buried the village, the old woman, Tomas's grandmother, had locked herself inside a cellar, surrounded by relics the villagers had long outlawed: carved bones, woven talismans made of human hair, clay jars sealed with wax and ash. She had once been a winter priestess, before the council banned the old rituals and twisted them into the yearly sacrifice. She knew the truth. The fire they fed every winter was not to appease the cold. It was to contain something far older than the mountain itself. A presence, a hunger that slumbered beneath the roots of the forest. And the children were not offerings. They were anchors, innocent souls, bound by fire, used to trap a formless thing the villagers feared too much to name. Over the years, the sacrifice had become tradition, then ritual, then blind obedience. No one asked what they were really burning, but the mountain never forgot. And Tomas, born without words, born with a veil still over his face, born during the storm that killed 13 villagers in one night, was not just a child. He was a vessel, and when they placed him on the pyre, they didn't just release a soul. They unsealed a mouth. The last fire watcher, far away, in a different village, a man named Jacob, kept the old scrolls. He was a fire watcher, descended from a line sworn to monitor the mountain's behavior. For over 60 years, nothing had changed, until the winter Tomas was burned. Jacob's scrolls began to flake. The ink bubbled. His candles would not stay lit. Every fire he lit whispered his name. He knew then. The seals had broken. The sacrifice had reversed. The child had become the fire. Jacob made his way toward the valley, through knee-deep snow and blind blizzards, until he reached the border. There he saw it. A ring of black trees circling the village ruins, trunks charred within, still weeping sap like blood. He stepped inside, and time changed. His breath stopped rising. His shadow moved without him, and he began to hear the voices. Thousands, crying, singing, screaming, one voice louder than the rest. "We were silent. You made us scream. Now you will hear us forever." Jacob turned to run, but the snow had become ash. His boots sank deeper and deeper until he felt heat beneath the ground. And from it, a hand reached up, the hand of a boy, smoldering, blackened, and smiling. What lies beneath the village? What the villagers never knew was that beneath their land, deeper than any well, was a pit, not of fire, not of water, of memory, a place where every scream, every sacrifice, every drop of burning flesh had gathered. And every child given to the fire did not die, not really. Their bodies perished, yes, but their voices remained, coiled around the mountain's roots, begging for release. Tomas was different because he listened, and the mountain, through him, finally had a tongue. The fires now burn upward. They flicker in the sky like reverse lightning, searching for the descendants of those who fed them. And every winter since, a new house in the surrounding towns collapses into sudden flame, without cause, without warning. And in the soot, investigators always find tiny footprints. The fire that spoke. To this day, no village has repopulated the mountain. Those who try vanish within days. The fog never clears. Satellites can't see through it. Drones lose signal. But one audio recording did survive, left behind by a documentary crew that got too close. They weren't even inside the boundary yet, just at the tree line. At first, it was just static, then a humming sound, then a whisper, growing louder. "We remember." Then screams. And finally, the voice of a child, calm, deliberate, as if telling a bedtime story. "They gave me to the fire. I gave them my voice. Now they will hear me burn. And then silence. Not one member of that crew was found. Part 7, the Echo Season. They call it Echo Season now. It begins every year on the same night. Tomas was burned, the 23rd night of the longest winter. In towns across the region, children begin to murmur in their sleep. Some wake up screaming. Others are found staring at fireplaces that were never lit. And in rare cases, they start whispering things they've never been taught. The pyre is breathing again. He walks in the smoke. The mountain is no longer asleep. Old people, those who grew up near the Cursed Valley, recognize the signs. They move away quietly, refusing to speak of the past. But the younger generations, disconnected from the old terror, dismiss the events as folklore, ghost stories, until they begin to dream of fire, not flames, but shapes within it, small hands, hollow eyes, mouths full of soot, faces not their own. Survivors of these dreams wake up to find burn marks on their floors, blackened in the shape of a child curled in a basket. And sometimes they hear the crackle of flame behind them, but when they turn, nothing is there, only the lingering scent of smoke and something older, something like teeth smoldering in ash. The last words. If you visit that mountain now, if you're foolish or desperate or drawn by something you can't explain, you won't find a village. You won't find the homes, the people, or the pyre. You'll find a ring of black trees and the sound of wind that whispers in many voices. But if you're very quiet and the snow is still, you might hear him, the child they burned, the one who never spoke, until he did, and what he says is always the same. The mountain kept my silence for 100 winters. Now I keep its fire, and it remembers the taste of children, the ash and the blood. It began slowly, nearly 20 winters after the village disappeared. In cities far from the cursed mountain, pediatric wards started recording strange cases. Children with no prior health issues would suddenly fall silent for days. Then they begin to hum low, tuneless vibrations that shook light bulbs and made small fires flicker. Some were found standing barefoot in the snow, not feeling the cold, whispering, "I hear him. He still speaks." Doctors assumed it was trauma, perhaps viral psychosis. But every single one of these children shared a strange trait, microscopic ash in their blood, not the result of inhalation or fire exposure. It was just there in their veins, clinging to red blood cells like tiny burnt wings. And then one of them, a 6-year-old girl in a southern orphanage, spoke in Tomas's voice. Not just his tone, his words. "You gave me to the flames. I took the flame with me." The building burned down that night. No source of ignition. No survivors. Only melted floors shaped like child-sized footprints and a black handprint on the ceiling. 20 feet above the ground. A secret file began circulating among disaster investigators and fringe researchers. Its title, Project Echokin. It documented 37 known children across the country with the same symptoms. They had never met, never traveled, but each one was born during a blizzard, began hearing the fire voice between ages 6 and 8, developed spontaneous burns on their palms in the exact same spiral pattern, matching the village's forbidden sigils. They called them Firemouths, children carrying Tomas's voice or a fragment of the thing that spoke through him. And then they started answering back. They're not just listening anymore. In one case, a boy named Eli was recorded whispering into a cold fireplace. Surveillance showed no other movement, but when the tape was enhanced, another whisper, deeper, older, layered, responded from the other side of the chimney. "Eli, are you alone?" Voice, never. The others scream with me. "We are Legion of Ash." "Eli, can I come to you?" Voice, "You already are." Eli vanished the next morning. Only soot remained in his bed, and the spiral burn was found scorched into the stone floor beneath the mattress. 3 days later, an entire neighborhood in a different city experienced a blackout, and every fireplace in the area erupted with blue-black flame, even homes that hadn't had fireplaces in decades. The authorities blamed an electrical grid malfunction, but some people saw things in the smoke. Faces, tiny hands, grinning mouths with cinders for teeth. Tomas is spreading. It became clear Tomas was no longer bound to mountain. His voice had carried to the smoke, through the screams, through the bloodline of sacrifice. And every child born near fire in silence or amid snow was now a potential vessel. In rare cases, adults were affected too, especially those whose ancestors came from a lost village. They'd wake up with burned tongues, whisper in dead languages, stare into candle flames and weep soot. The fire didn't just want to be heard anymore. It wanted to be seen. One returned from the fire, and then something no one expected happened. A woman named Anea, a folklorist obsessed with the mountain legend, hiked into the boundary of the cursed zone alone. She brought with her an artifact believed to be the last piece of the original sacrificial pyre, a charred wooden medallion shaped like a child's open mouth. She disappeared for 2 weeks. Then, one snowy morning, she walked out of the mountain's border, barefoot, unharmed and smiling. But her eyes were completely black. Not blind, just filled with smoke. She spoke only once to the rescue team. He's building a village of fire for all the children who screamed, and now they're calling others to live in it. Then she burst into flame, completely silent. Not a scream, not a twitch. The only sound was the flicker of burning skin, the one who refused to burn. Among the dozens of Firemouth children studied under Project Ekokin, there was one anomaly. Her name was Lena Velkov, age 10, born in a snowstorm. Parents died in a house fire. She somehow survived, completely unharmed, lying in the ashes with a smile on her lips. All the signs were there, spiral burns on her palms, humming in her sleep, speaking in Tomas's voice. But Lena did something none of the others had ever done. She refused to answer. Every night, the fire would call to her. Through the furnace, the oven, the flicker of a match. Her guardians reported she would sit up straight at exactly 3:07 a.m., eyes wide open, as the temperature dropped in the room, and she'd whisper, "I hear you, but I won't let you in." This defiance was unexpected. One night, thermal cameras in her room captured something crawling out of the fireplace. Smoke shaped like a child, but twisted, its arms too long and its face faceless. Lena turned her head calmly and said, "Go back. I am not your vessel." The smoke screamed without sound and vanished. The next day, the fireplace was filled with ice. Not ash, solid black ice, the fire's new shape. Lena was moved to a secret facility, buried underground, reinforced with fireproof metal and layers of salt and ice. But fire doesn't need permission anymore. Not since Tomas tore open the first voice in the flames. And now it wanted to form. A humanoid figure made of cinder, ash, and scorched bone has been seen in multiple locations. Walking into fires as a house blazes, then vanishing. Emerging from industrial chimneys for seconds, always pointing west. Appearing in dreams, always saying the same words in Tomas's layered voice. The village has grown. We burn below you now. And on satellite scans of the mountain, a new structure was spotted. Impossible to explain. A perfect spiral-shaped village, made entirely of ash and shadow, visible only in infrared. Scientists called it a glitch, but Lena called it by name. That's where they're building the world they want. A place of only flame. A place where silence screams forever. The fire has a mouth, and it's opening wider. The village that burned a child every winter thought the fire ended with the scream, but it began with it. The scream fed something ancient, something that had waited centuries for a child to speak, with a voice made of pain, silence, and smoke. Tomas didn't die. He spread. Now, every whisper in the dark, every candle that flickers on its own, every child who stares too long into a flame might be hearing the first words of fire's true language. And when the last fire mouth speaks the final phrase, the spiral will open, and we'll all hear what Tomas really was. Not a boy, Not a sacrifice, but the first breath of something much, much older